which is these milestone payments, which totalled about 83.25 million. Now, I'm looking at the report from the Rural Economy and Connectivity Committee back in December 2020, and they say here there's, in paragraph 160, there's strong evidence that the contractor deliberately proceeded to construct specific sections of the vessel either out of sequence or not according to the proper specification, purely as a means of triggering milestone payments on the contract. And again, paragraph 157, the contractor progressing certain work on the vessels either incorrectly or out of sequence, purely in order to trigger payments against the contract. Well, and Commodore Luke van Beek also gave evidence to the committee that Ferguson's deliberately slowed down some of the subcontracting. So I'm trying to understand. I mean, I'm a layman in this. I don't understand the naval contracts, but it seems to me that if the work, if milestones are at sort of A, B, and C, and the work between A and B has not been carried out, and just the work at that milestone to trigger a payment is being done, that doesn't seem to me to be right.
No, it's a misunderstanding. Maybe I can explain. The milestones were based on the fabrication. That was one of the big milestones, percentage of fabrication. I told you that there was no prescribed sequence. So to say, for the committee to say that it was done out of sequence is not an accurate comment, because there is no sequence. What we had to do, because of what I went over about the delay on the engines, the propellers, the draft, what we had to do was build sections that were not the sections that we intended to start with, and not in the sequence that we intended. But that was our choice, and that was our decision, and it was up to us how we built that. The idea was to keep the work going and keep people employed and do as much as we could with the information that we had, and we had approved by Lloyd's. And that's why we built the centre sections. That triggered milestone payments in the fabrication, because we had done the fabrication, and they were legally obliged to pay us for what had been done. So there's nothing, there's no skulduggery here or manipulating what should have been done to trigger anything. And I think it's insulting to insinuate that we would do that. Well, if you look at how the milestones were laid out, it was on percentage of fabrication, and we were doing the percentage of fabrication in a different order from we initially intended, but it was valid, and it was for a very good reason, to keep the work going and the project progressing. Otherwise, we would have had people sitting about twiddling their thumbs, and we would have had a big delay until we got this information sorted out.
Well, I think this committee really needs to understand that, because we look at what the previous committee produced, and they seem to be looking at this from the point of view that it's something extraordinary, the way the milestone payments have been done, and the fact that they're out of sequence and so forth. That implies to me what I'm reading here, just what I said, which is, did that work between A and B take place to allow the milestone at B to be triggered?
No, it wasn't a case of if you do all of these blocks, it'll trigger it, and we did the last one to trigger it. It was on percentage of fabrication, on certain items of equipment being bought. So there was evidence that we'd bought the equipment, and it triggered if there were big payments for engines and big items, there would be a payment that you could call once you had bought that. And when we bought it, it went into CMAL's ownership. So we triggered payments. It was a payment to us to buy them, but immediately it was transferred to CMAL. So there was no triggering of payments, to give us more. Whatever it triggered went to CMAL, and it was equipment that was bought, and it was percentage of fabrication. And our job as the management, or the management team's job, was to keep as much as we could on programme by fabricating what we had cleared with Lloyds at the time, and not stand about waiting on decisions to be made that should have been made earlier before the specification was given out.
You see, there are certain statements in the previous report that seem to raise a question. For example, in paragraph 157, they state that the profile of milestone payments may have resulted in the contractor progressing certain work on the vessels either incorrectly or out of sequence, purely in order to trigger payments against the contract.
Well, I can't, I don't know what I need to do to get this over, and it's really important that the committee get this. The payments were triggered by equipment being purchased or percentage of fabrication. If we are fabricating centre sections of the ship because we have them all cleared and we've got Lloyd signed off on them, that's valid to do, and it's the right thing to do. I don't know how I can make that clearer. That's the absolute factual truth. That's how it was set up. In fact, Luke Van Beek had also made the comment in his submission to the committee that he thought the payments were wrongly put in place because they didn't match the cash outflow, and there was a mistake in the way they were done. He said they should have matched the cash outflow, but it would never have matched it because there was additional work having to be done, changes being made, and it was always going to cost a lot more. What we were pushing for early on was, let's have mediation to agree who's at fault here. And I wasn't expecting FMEL to get off with it. I was expecting them to be responsible for some, but for sure CMAL weren't getting off with it, or shouldn't have got off with it, but they have.